All right, so before I bring out our guests, I like to read some receipts, if you will. First up is Nkechi Okoro Carroll. She is the showrunner for All American Homecoming, and Found. She is the second African-American female showrunner to have 3 television series on air simultaneously after Shonda Rhimes. She was also listed as one of the Hollywood Reporter's top TV showrunners of 2023 and was recently honored at the Essence Black Women in Hollywood Awards. She was born and raised in New York, raised in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, England. Nkechi earned a BA in economics and French from the University of Pennsylvania, where she graduated with honors. She also holds an MA in economics from New York University. All right, come on out here. Yeah. Sherman Payne, his debut feature film, Charm City Kings, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, where it won a special jury prize. Sherman was a writer and producer on Showtime's hit series Shameless, which concluded its 11-season run in 2021. He recently adapted the provocative crime novel Razorblade Tears for Jerry Bruckheimer and Paramount Pictures, and Sherman has also adapted the best-selling novel Emperor Ocean Park for television and serves as an executive producer and showrunner, which is airing now on MGM+. Please welcome Sherman. Welcome. So I gave a bit of your receipts, but tell us where you started loving and falling in love with television or entertainment and film.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I fell in love with TV at a very young age. I watched an obscene amount of television growing up. And because I was always in and out of the States, and I was living in West Africa, and I was living in England, I'm about to really age myself. So we would VHS tape. It's a little like rectangular thing. We would, so that we could watch it over and over again when we were back home. And so there was just this, I don't know, I loved the characters, I loved the storyline, I loved cliffhangers, all of those things. But I come from a very, traditional Nigerian family, so that was not a career option at first, until I sort of started doing plays and fell in love with Shakespeare and focused on sort of theater while I was doing economics, and then slowly but surely taught myself to write for TV.
Okay. Sherman?
Yeah, in the mid-'90s, I moved from New York City to a really terrible place in suburban Cincinnati, Ohio. But it was a school district that was building a new high school. And part of what they built in that high school at the time was like a state-of-the-art, for the mid-'90s, a state-of-the-art video editing, making suite. And I took one class and loved it. And by my senior year, I had like half my schedule in that room. And I was just, making little videos with my friends, music videos, skateboard videos, experiments, and really started to think about filmmaking as something that I had a little bit of talent doing. And we won an award later on, and that really sort of propelled me into college and trying to find a good filmmaking program that I could learn about storytelling. And sort of throughout my collegiate career and grad school career, the directing side of it sort of faded, and I just discovered that I was really excited to wake up every day and write. And that was where my passion really was. So the rest is history.
So you both didn't come from traditional Hollywood backgrounds.
Not at all.
So who gave you your first entryway into, who gave you a chance in Hollywood?
If you ask my mother, her. But so what I would do, because I realized very quickly, I was working for the Federal Reserve as an economist. I worked out of the New York Fed for a while I was doing the theater scene, and then when my husband and I moved to Los Angeles, and I knew I wanted to pursue TV writing, but I didn't really know how I was going to get in. I just knew I kind of had to be in Los Angeles to make it happen. So what I would do was I would use my vacation days at the Federal Reserve to do background work on set, to meet crews, to then hire them to shoot my short film. So I'd always go like one position down from the position I needed. So I'd go up to like the sound mixer or like the boom operator, and I'd be like, do you want to get your first sound mixing credit? I'm shooting a short film this weekend. Or camera operator, do you want to get your first DP credit? I would always promise good food, feed your crew, always, because we didn't really have money for much else. And then I would sit in the back of acting classes and approach the actors afterwards and ask them if they wanted to. That's how a lot of actors I still work with to today, that's how I met them. Would shoot short films on the weekend, and those films did well on the film festival circuit and landed me my literary manager. Okay. And she was like, this is great, loved your short film, can't really do anything with it. What else do you have? And that's the moment where I always talk about sort of preparedness meeting opportunity, because if I'd said, oh, well, I'm still sort of figuring it out,
yeah,
I wouldn't be here today. And so unfortunately for her, I was like, well, what would you like? I've got these like hour dramas, I've got these soaps, I've got YA, I've got these features, and ended up signing with her. And then I love a plan. I love a good plan. I'm very Nigerian. We had a whole 3-year plan. We said year one, because again, I didn't come up in the business. I wasn't an assistant in the business, so no one knew who I was. I was some random economist trying to be a writer. So year one of the plan was get your material out to studios, get executives sort of familiar with your name, all of that stuff. Year 2, showrunner meetings, get showrunners familiar with you. Year 3, we get you staffed on your first show. So I was like, okay, I like a plan. And it was about 9 months to the day after that conversation, my manager ran into a showrunner's assistant's roommate. Yes, a showrunner's assistant's roommate outside of Nordstrom's bathroom, would not let the poor man go inside until he listened to her pitch me. And he's like, I'm not in the business. And she's like, but your roommate is. And so finally, I think he just gave her his roommate's information so the crazy woman would go away. But that was how she got my script to Hart Hansen, who was the showrunner of Bones at the time. And he was looking for writers for The Finder, the spinoff with Michael Clark Duncan, may he rest, and Jeff Stoltz. And that was how I got my first and only showrunner meeting. So it was less than a year after I signed with my manager. Went in, met with Hart. Everyone had notoriously told me he didn't love soaps, and I sent him a very soapy pilot because I felt it was my strongest material. And also, I did not in a million years think I was getting staffed. I was just like, okay, this is good practice. It's my first showrunner meeting. And then I heard nothing for 2 weeks, nothing. And I was like, okay, it was good practice, moving on back to our 3-year plan. After the fact, I found out that 2 weeks was him fighting for me, because what he was hearing back from executives was, oh, well, if you want a diverse writer, we have a list. And he's like, I don't want a diverse writer, I want her. And he fought for me, thankfully. And so I ended up getting staffed. This was in 2011. Got staffed on The Finder. Quit my job on at the Fed on a Friday. It was a week later, the following Monday, I walked onto the Fox lot to my first show and have been blessed to write ever since.
All right.
Amazing.
Sherman, what was your entree into Hollywood?
Yeah, I'm also not from a Hollywood insider track. My people are from Ohio. It, could not be further away from the Hollywood world. But I was in New York City. I was finishing grad school, and I was working at a nonprofit in the Bronx, teaching filmmaking to kids. And I had simultaneously won a contest at my school. And part of winning the contest was you get to go to LA and take some meetings. It was a really good program that they had at Columbia University. So I went, I had never been to LA. I had never been west of Chicago in my entire life. So I went to my boss at this nonprofit and I said, hey, you're sort of connected in the film world as a nonprofit guy. Is there anybody I should meet when I go to LA? Because I don't want to just be confined to the meetings that my school set me up with. Who else can I meet? And he said, yeah, there's this guy that we've been trying to get to come in and talk to the kids. His name is Franklin Leonard. Do you guys know who Franklin Leonard is?
Yes.
So at the time, Franklin Leonard was a development executive at Universal. This was before he even went to work with Will Smith. And he took a meeting with me.
Was this before the Blacklist?
This is the, I think, Yeah, basically around the
Okay.
same time. I think the blacklist existed as an email literal list at that time. It was very early, but this is way before the website.
Okay.
And so I borrowed a friend's rented car to go drive out to Universal and meet with Franklin Leonard, who only took this meeting with me off the strength of just like this nonprofit guy saying you should meet with this guy. And we didn't really talk about the nonprofit. And we didn't really talk about films either. It was World Cup, and he's a soccer fanatic. I don't like soccer, but I faked it, and we had a great conversation about soccer. And at the end of the conversation, literally the last 10 minutes of the conversation, and I will appreciate this brother forever for this, he sort of asked me a little bit about my writing, and he went to the phone and picked up the phone and called another black executive and said, hey, you need to meet this guy, Sherman Payne. So I extended my trip a day. I was supposed to go back to New York. Then I drove to another executive, clicked with him, and it was just people really going to bat for me. Nobody had read anything.
Yeah.
They just were like saying, we like this guy, meet him. And I got to this woman whose name is Tonya Davis. I think she has most recently worked with the Obamas at Higher Ground, but at the time she was at Disney. And she actually was one who read everything that I wrote, and she hooked me up with my first manager off the strength of reading those scripts.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, I love hearing those stories because for a lot of people that look like us, we're not born in that system. I know now there's a lot of opportunities being made, trying to make I think there's an HBCU in LA program that's trying to create a pipeline to entertainment jobs, but you all are there. Before we get into the nitty gritty of your shows, one of your bosses is here, or your boss is here in the audience.
Our biggest boss.
Our biggest
Big boss. Big boss.
Channing Dungey is here, guys, and if you don't know who she is the chairwoman of Warner Brothers Television Studios. She has one of the, if not the highest ranking position for a black woman in Hollywood. And Channing, I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but raise your hand.
Put her on the spot.
But, you know, they kind of touched on two people that were really advocating for them. So how important is it for you to be supportive of your creators as they bring you projects for you then to greenlight and put on television?
No, I mean, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we always say is that we want Warner Brothers Television Group to be the best home for creative talent. And it's incredibly important to us to work with the talent, to hear where they're coming from, to, you know, we always say that it's not about how many projects you have, it's about how passionate you are about those projects. Because one of the things that we are committed to is if you love it and we love it, we're going to find a home for it. And, you know, that's something that actually came to pass very recently with Nkechi's show Found, which was, you know, a passion project of hers going way back. It was something that it was a story that she was very motivated to tell, and I won't get into the details in case you guys cover that, but because we knew how passionately she felt about that, we had taken it a number of places until we finally found the right home for it at NBC and the right people behind it that wanted to champion it. But if for whatever reason that hadn't worked out, we would have still kept trying because it's a story she wants to tell. And I always say to people, write what you know, write the story that only you can tell, and then we're going to be behind you all the way to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Jane. So speaking about stories, tell us what's the process for developing a series. NK, we'll start with you. And also, we didn't really have clarity for people who don't know. Describe briefly what is a showrunner.
Okay, so I like to say a showrunner is simultaneously the head writer of the show and the CEO of an entire corporation. You are both in charge and sort of the final say and voice on, you know, managing the budget, your, 150-something crew, your entire cast. You're also shaping the storylines. You know, we have a writer's room and we have a number of writers who work with us because it is impossible for us to write every script, but we're shaping the storylines, we're approving the storylines. I also like to add, we are HR, we are therapists, we are, honestly, on any given day. I often joke about, part of a showrunner's job being that sort of HR component or that therapist component, but I actually believe it's a very important part of the job because, you know, I know Sherman, so I know this is true for him as well. On me, no project is more important than the human. And so, you know, on one of my projects, we had a situation where it was a very, very emotional scene. It involved someone finding someone who had OD'd. And we did the table read, everyone was good, everything was good, everything's exciting. And the minute I landed on set, I knew there was an issue. I could feel it off the actor. And so once we shot the first take, and then I pulled them aside and I was like, is everything good? And I found out that their mother had passed away from ODing. If I'd known that, I would have never have put that actor through it. There is nothing we cannot write our way around. There would have been another way for us to tell the story we were trying to tell without forcing that actor. And that's why I always say the therapist part is very important, not because we're trying to be in their business, but to create a trust so that our talent can come to us and be like, hey, I'm not trying to change the storyline or anything, but this scene in particular is triggering for me, and then we can work around it. But essentially, that's what a showrunner is. We're both head writer, and we are business people. It's right and left brain. It's why when writers come up to me and they're always like, I really want to be a showrunner. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, are you positive? Do you want to be a head writer? Do you want to be number two in the room that gets to help shape the story and everything? Or do you really want to be the showrunner? Because it involves so much more than just the writing, but also is so satisfying because we get to shape the stories that we put on the air.
I want to, and Sherman, do you have anything to add? Like, what's been
I mean,
your
barely. That
experience?
was such a beautiful encapsulation of what the job is, and you know, NK is obviously a very, very esteemed and experienced showrunner at this point. I just did my first show, so I'm taking notes from her as well. But she also summarized what my experience has been. I'll add a couple things. One is I totally agree with that therapist side of it and looking out for the whole human. I told people early on in my showrunning experience that I have never had so many people who aren't my family cry in my presence. I mean, you know, just people are. It's a extremely emotionally taxing thing to be on a movie set or a TV set. It is long hours. It takes all of your effort. It takes all of your brain power, and people go through life simultaneously, and those emotions are exasperated by, you know, working so hard. So people, sometimes you're just literally the shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
Sometimes your set, you got a couple days where your set is running smooth, and the people you've hired are doing their job to a T, and you don't have to get in and interfere. But people want to come talk to the boss and know that the boss is listening to them, and there's no solution. You know, they're just frustrated, and you listen and you try your hardest. You know, the other thing I'll add is that you are also the continuity, because you're oftentimes the only person who has been involved in every single step of the process.
Yeah.
You're there from the first story discussion all the way till the show airs, to the very last final cut of whatever episode is airing. So it's really important that, like, you might know that this thing that seems small in the script seems small to the director, but you're the one who knows we have to hammer that home. We got to get like 30 seconds of coverage on that little tiny thing on the table because we're going to need it for the story going forward.
Wow. So, NK, you are working on series that are original. And Sherman, you have worked, your Empire of Ocean Park is an adaptation.
Yes.
I want to go to you really quickly because that was such a revered novel. How careful were you in it? And also, let me add, Emperor Ocean Park had been optioned 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is something I didn't get to ask you the other night is, what do you do when you have something that's been around that long? It was I think I read something, they really wanted Denzel at first when it was going to be a film, and then now it's a series, and Forrest Whitaker is in the lead role. Like, how do you shake off the energy that's been around it and make it your own?
That's a great question. I mean, the book had been around since it came out in 2002. It was optioned shortly before it was released to the public. And they went through a lot of different iterations. It was going to be a movie at some point. It was going to be a network show, sort of an ongoing mystery series for a network. It's going to be on cable. It's going to be a limited series. You know, I think a lot of great writers took a crack at that story. and they couldn't get it done for whatever reason. Probably not because of their writing, probably because of what was going on in the industry at that time. It's hard to get a project going even with a great script. So I wasn't really so concerned with what they did. I'm sure that they put their voices and their best effort into it. I knew that, I have to really follow the conviction of my own tastes and instincts, and I tried to make it my own. I also can't deny that there was a certain confluence of things that allowed us to get this on the air at this moment. So I tried to write the best script I possibly could, but also worked with great partners and found the right people at MGM Plus who were really excited about putting it on the air.
And NK, with your series, you have 3 at a time, so we're going to get to that.
That's wild. I can't even imagine. I actually can't imagine.
But how do you ensure that your characters and storylines are so authentic? Like, what is the importance of story? It's kind of like what Channing talked about, like, write what you know.
Right. I mean, I know you'd be shocked to know I am not a sports person, and I know 2 of my 3 shows involve sports. But what I do understand is the pursuit of a dream that people around you feel is unrealistic. That's the authentic part, right? The other part, the football of it all and everything, we have amazing specialists we work with on all of our sports to make the nonsense I write make sense in real terms of the sport. But that ache, that pursuit of a dream, our Black youth and the way sometimes the world can make them feel like their dreams are unrealistic, that I fully understand. I fully understand it myself as a young Nigerian American pursuing writing at a time where, there was maybe one of us in the writer's room, if we were lucky, and if they hired someone else, it was to replace the one that was in the room. We weren't allowed to be in there together. I understand it as a mother because my son is also a student athlete pursuing D1 dreams, and so that place of authenticity is where these stories come from. And the same is true for all the writers. When we're staffing our writers' rooms and we're looking for writers to work on these projects with us, that's, it's almost like Voltron. Voltron's the one where all the pieces come together and form, right? It's like that. I'm like, okay, who's bringing authenticity in a place where that might be more of a weakness for me? I need that person in my room. Who's really great at this? I need that person in my room so that we can all bring our shared experiences. And also, again, it goes back to building that trust. If people are going to open up in the writer's room and really share their stories that allow you to bring that authenticity to the screen, they have to trust that that's not going to be abused. They have to trust that that is a safe space where they can do that. So that's an important part of the process so that we can bring it to the screen.
And as you're working every day, as you say, you're like the CEO of these series, but you're also creatives. So how do you feed your creativity? Because you need that 4th show or that film.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you have to, at the end of the day, we're creatives. We are in this, if we wanted to be business people, I'd be back working at the Federal Reserve. And so you have to create the time and space for that. And different showrunners give up different things for that. I gave up sleep. I was like, well, I've got to run the show, I'm writing the scripts, I'm doing the thing, and then how do I replenish my own creative juices when I'm reading stuff that excites me, or, I'm watching something that I'm just like, oh, that feeling, what is that? Oh, that's envy. Like, I love what they did there. What's my version of that? That's the stuff that usually happens late at night for me. Or I love the theater. The theater is somewhere where I get replenished a lot. And so, my husband laughs at me all the time because I will literally hop on a plane and go to England for 48 hours to see a play on the West End because I love that actor or I love the director. But it's like, to me, I'm like, it's a business expense. It fuels me. I come back like invigorated and I'm like, ooh, how do we do that on TV? Like, this is, so you make time for it, but you absolutely have to force yourself to make time for it. Like, I have blocks in my calendar that are usually after 6 p.m. that are like, I'm not doing anything business, finance, anything related. It is time for me to work on the pitch that I'm really excited about. It's time for me to read whatever novel I'm considering adapting. It's time where I'm, writing my own original material. That's my brain got so used to writing at night when I was working a full-time job and pursuing this that it's still, those are its, most powerful hours. So I block out time on my calendar to make sure I'm feeding that every day.
What about you, Sherman?
A couple things. I mean, being protective of your time as a writer and a creative is so important because, we're not. Let me go on an anti-capitalist rant right now. We're not in America conditioned to think that people can like their work. So when people see you passionate, loving, like we're doing what we love to do, they feel like that's a hobby. Like you could intrude on that. Like, you could call Sherman up to come out, interrupt, all that stuff. So you have to be really, really passionate. You have to treat it like a job. And even when you're not show running or you're not working in a room, which you probably don't have that experience much recently.
I don't know what that is.
You still have to be really protective of your time because that time might look like sitting at the computer and typing away, but that time also might look like sitting in a quiet room and thinking, or reading a novel that has nothing to do with what you're working on currently. For me, sometimes, seriously, that looks like watching SportsCenter and just vegging out and letting my mind go wherever it goes. My wife sees that and thinks, like, why is he just chilling? But I'm actually trying to think and reinvigorate the creative juices. The second thing is, I always try to be a great observer of life. As we get more busy and as we get older, life experiences become, work and family, and so they become limited. But I still try to see what is going on in my world and the people around me. So in Emperor of Ocean Park, there is a storyline with Mariah, really about her conflict about motherhood versus work and career versus motherhood. That is really ripped from the headlines of my life because I saw my wife deal with that in a major way during COVID when she wanted to be home full time with my son who wasn't in school, but also didn't want to sacrifice her career. And I sort of took that and twisted it and put it in my work. So I try to see what's going on around me and let those stories, even if I'm not experiencing them firsthand, really fuel, creative juices for potential projects and scripts and scenes and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, both of you have work that centers Black stories, so thank you for that. But why is that a priority for each of you, that you tell these stories? And what is the thing that drives you to make sure they're told right?
It's funny because I don't necessarily, when I got into this business, I wasn't on this mission to center Black stories. I was on a mission to create great television with compelling stories that impacted the world in a way where it left it a little bit of a better place than how I found it. Those stories for me ended up being Black stories. Part of it for me was, and I never make a secret about this, is, I have 2 Black sons. I am doing everything humanly possible to keep them alive and see them through the process. And if having a Spencer James on television, or having a Damon on TV means that someone looks at my son differently when they see him in the street, and instead of being fearful, they see his hopes, dreams, aspirations, they see Spencer, well, then that's one more person that's helping my son get home at night.
Yeah.
And so, thank you. So very selfishly, also growing up, again, because I loved TV so much, and the TV shows I watched, especially sort of the YA shows, didn't center people who looked like me. I still love them. I still fight over, whether it was Brandon or Dylan in Beverly Hills 90210. Like, you find a way to sort of, even though you don't see yourself there, you put yourself there.
Yeah.
And so it was important to me that my kids and their peers saw themselves, that they didn't have to work so hard to put themselves in the situation to enjoy the show. And in making that experience, it actually becomes a universal story. The pursuit of a dream is a universal story. Taking something, if we're talking about found, taking something traumatic that's happened to you and turning it to power and purpose. I mean, as a people, that's what we do on a daily basis. And so making that the A story, putting that on TV, normalizing that, helping us as a culture just feel seen. It felt like good storytelling. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with that representation side of things, is that, I was consuming, like we all were, because we didn't have a lot of options, I was consuming predominantly white media too, and then, loving the little bits and pops of Black media we got growing up. So I wanted to see more of that. I just wanted to write what I wanted to see more of. I also had an experience of life where I moved around a little bit, and I was often in different situations. Like, I was randomly in New York City in an all Latino Catholic school for a year. I was in all Black environments. I was in predominantly white environments. And I realized interacting with all those other cultures that I had an experience that was really unique to me, to my family, to my other black homies. And I felt like I wanted to put that on screen. I wanted to tell those kind of stories. And I started thinking about this stuff before we had Miles Morales on the big screen, before Jordan Peele put out Get Out, just a few years ago, Kerry Washington was like the only legitimate black TV star on screen. Now we're more diverse, but at the time that I was thinking about scripts, I was trying to get out there and be, add to black representation on television. It's much more diverse now than it was 10, 15 years ago, but that's what I was thinking about.
Talk to us about the fact that you both have a home at Warner Brothers Television. And what does that mean to be supported by a legacy brand?
I mean, look, every time, and this is for real, every time I drive onto that lot, I swear I get out of my car and I do a cartwheel, and I do, you see the water tower, it's got the 100 years, that's crazy. Yeah. It is crazy that not only do we get to make magic for a living, but I get to drive onto a lot where I have 5 stages, I have 2 buildings, it's bananas, and I never take that for granted.
Wait, I just got chills. How many stages?
5.
How many buildings?
2.
Ooh. All right, continue.
It's funny, I didn't actually even realize the math until my assistant, we were in a golf cart and she was taking me to a sound mix and she stopped in front of one of the stages and she was like, have you really taken this in? And I'm like, taken what in? And she was like, you have the most stages under one name on this lot. And until she said it, I'd just been adding shows and adding stages and just doing work. And she was like, no, I really need you to stop and process this. And I was just like, on the Warner Brothers lot, again, with that WB logo, with a chairwoman who looks like me. I don't take these things for granted. This is amazing. And it's, I don't know, I've been at Warner Brothers for 7, 8 years now. And it's home. It's, there's a feeling that happens when I drive onto that lot that is like no other. And I truly don't take it for granted. Yeah. I mean, my 12-year-old couldn't care less what I do for a living until he realized the same WB logo that was on my building was on the cartoons he watched. Then all of a sudden he was like, wait, hold up. Can you create a cartoon where we, I'm like, oh, now I'm cool. Yeah. Now because of the WB, okay, got it. But yeah, it feels amazing.
Wow. Sherman?
Yeah, I don't have any buildings yet. Or any stages.
Soon come, as we say.
Can I borrow one?
Soon come.
No, but I've had a fantastic experience working at Warner Brothers. I worked with Julie Plec when she was still at Warner Brothers and had a lot of shows on the CW. And now I've worked really closely with John Wells, who has spent his entire legendary career at Warner Brothers. And it's just home for me now. I've done 4 projects. Some have made it to the screen and some haven't, but it's a really great place. And it's not like that everywhere. Because when I ventured outside of the Warner Brothers family, it's been mixed results. So, yeah, it's been great.
So you two have definitely been successful, but we read the headlines. Hollywood is still a challenge, and especially getting diverse voices. What would you like to see change in Hollywood? What are a long-term fix and a fast fix that we can help get more diverse stories and diverse people?
There's definitely been a lot of progress made. When I look around at the writers' rooms I came up in, and then I look around at the writers' rooms that exist now, the progress has been beautiful, and we just need to continue doing that. But the area where I would love to see more growth is in black executives. Channing can't be holding down the fort by herself. We need, and a lot of it comes because I think people just don't understand that pipeline, that job. When you're in film school, it's all about acting, it's directing, it's all you can learn to know more about being a gaffer than you do about being a film or TV executive. But those are the gatekeepers. At the end of the day, we're thankful to work at a studio where when we're passionate about something, even if they don't fully get it, they're like, but I get your passion, so let's do it. Yeah. But that isn't always the case. And so a lot of the time, some of the barriers to these shows making it on the air is because the gatekeepers making the decisions about the show don't understand it. Don't understand it, whether it's from a cultural perspective or just from their life lived experience. And you know, you can't blame them. They're human. They know what they know. We all see the world through our filters. We all process the world through our experiences. And so we need more of us in those positions, greenlighting the projects. And I feel like that's really the next major step to continue to push through this progress that we've started to see.
I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. It has to be in the hierarchy of executives, and not only people who hire, but people who help to oversee the creative execution of these stories. We need, you know, more diverse executives in the ranks, you know. And like you said, it's not. Sometimes the history of exclusion in Hollywood has been really nefarious and evil and racist. But other times, it's people just not taking the time to think. They go, hey, that kid reminds me of me when I was a kid. Well, I don't necessarily, right? Like, I don't necessarily remind you, guy who's hiring, of yourself. Yeah. But, you know, there is a chance when we get more voices, more diversity, gender, race, all of that, we're going to see more diversity in the writers' rooms. And we're going to get more diversity in the stories that are being told as well. So I just want to echo what she said, because I totally agree.
And what are you two working on right now? Like, aside from your creative shows, do you do any mentoring? And what do you guys think about mentoring?
Mentoring changed my life. I fully subscribe to mentoring. It's funny because, you know, sort of the busier you get, it legitimately has to be a priority. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's going to be one of the first things that falls by the wayside. So I mentor. It's a requirement of every writer who works under a Rock My Soul production that mentoring comes with the gig. Okay. Because it is the only way we sort of can expand our access. I also, you know, part of it came out of a frustration that, you know, I wasn't, especially Black female TV writers at the time, I wasn't seeing enough. I was tired of being called a unicorn. I mean, listen, I appreciate it. Like, thank you. But I knew it wasn't true. I was like, no. I know other badass women, really gifted voices, great writers. And the fact that the industry didn't know them was really frustrating me. And so I was still a baby writer at the time. It was myself, Lena Waithe, Erica Johnson. And we decided, if we can't rattle those names off, how can we expect them to? And so we formed a Black female TV writers group. Started with 12 people in my living room 9 years ago. We're now 263 staffed Black female TV writers. Wow. And that, you know, not just growing the group and referring each other for jobs and all of that stuff, but also just creating a space where we can give each other advice on sort of some of the situations that come up in this industry that are so weird and unique and might be a reason why someone might be like, oh, I'm not welcome here. It's time for me to pack my bags and go home. Given a safe space where we can have those conversations and be like, well, no, when that happened to me, X, Y, and Z, go talk to your showrunner, do this, do that. That kind of is always going to be so important to me because we don't want to be here by ourselves. We want, like, you know, I'm so excited for that next generation of voices. Like I said, I love TV. I still watch General Hospital every day. Like, I'm so excited about these new voices coming out and their TV shows and wanting to watch them. And so, you know, whatever I can do within the 24 hours a day I have to help with those pipelines. You know, I just spoke at HBCU in LA, again, to try and encourage that next generation of, and it's next generation of whoever, storytellers, actors, directors, gaffers, executives, whatever it is you want to be, we don't make our shows in a vacuum. You know, it takes a village to do what we do, and every piece of that village matters. And so I just want to see us out there across the board.
Okay. Yeah, mentorship is equally as important to me, and I've been all throughout my writing career, well before being a showrunner, trying to do it informally, help people wherever I can, answer the calls from my alma maters, especially to talk to young Black students. But what I'm really excited about these days is that sometimes my mentorship can come with a paycheck. You know, sometimes I can now make hiring decisions. I was very excited that my room was an all-Black room, and we had 3 Black women on the staff. They all looked to me and said, I had not been in a room with this many Black women before. So I was really excited about that. And a lot of those were, 2 of those writers were very early in their career, and I was giving them their first or second chance in a room like that. And that's really, really important to me. Yeah. So it's really cool to be in a position of of power where you can hire people, and that mentorship can come with actual tangible career steps.
Before we wrap, because something I'm thinking about, again, you guys are both power, you're both running these businesses. How important is your number two? Because I find so many people, they want to, like you said, they want to be the star, they want to be the director, and sometimes those are small roles you get, or opportunities. But that number two, because like you said, you guys can't be everywhere, and you do need to sleep.
I'm getting better at it. I got like 5 hours the other night. It was amazing. I couldn't do my shows without my number twos.
Okay.
And I now, in part because I was like, okay, I also want to be around to see my kid make it to the NBA or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I need to eat healthier, doctor's appointments, sleep, water, all those things. I now have co-showrunners on all 3 of my shows because I cannot be in every place at one time. And quite frankly, I don't want to be, And so I have a black female co-showrunner on Found, black male co-showrunner on All American, black male co-showrunner on Homecoming. And these are people that I came up in the business with. Like, we were baby writers together, just, sitting there with our laptops, like, we gonna make it one day. And now we're here. But they're invaluable because they're you when you can't be there. I send them to set, they cover a post, like all the things. But truthfully, all of my writers, to a certain extent, serve that purpose. Even if you're a staff writer, even if you're a baby writer, I make you produce your episode. We are going to catch you. We're a safety net. Nothing is going to land on that set that hasn't been approved by me or hasn't been approved by my co-showrunner, Jamie. But you have to learn to do this yourself. It's the only way, if you really want to be a showrunner, that you can legitimately train and learn the gig. And also, quite frankly, I just believe it makes you better writers, because writing doesn't stop on the page. You now go to set and you're working with your actor and something doesn't feel right and you've got to adjust. You have to be able to do that on a fly. You have to be able to talk to number one on your call sheet, whether it's Forrest Whitaker or whether it's a brand new actor. You need to be able to have that conversation. It's a collaboration. You need to be able to go into post and realize, no matter how great the script was, something isn't working. How do I fix it with what I have in that editing bay with my editor? All of that is part of being a writer. All of that is part of one day being a showrunner. And so I require that all of my writers learn to do that, and they do it on their episodes. And then all of us who are executive producers or in more senior positions, we're the safety net for them. But that's how you train up the next generation.
Sherman, how important is your number two?
I mean, invaluable.
Okay.
Shakri Tillman, who was an executive producer on this show, and the number two, just like we were talking about, he could cover set, he could prep an episode, and I didn't have to worry about micromanaging that, because I knew that even if we disagreed about something, it wasn't going to be so far off that it was going to be a disaster and that we, ruined, wasted time or whatever. I also had a rule on my set that anything that was on my schedule, he was welcome to come to. There was no Sherman showrunner stuff that wasn't an open door to him. Even if he sat at the side of the table and just listened and observed and didn't have any input, I wanted him to be able to see. This is my homie, and we were baby writers together as well. But I want him to be able to see everything. And so, he had access to my schedule, just like my assistant had access to my schedule, and he could see everything.
Okay. Before we wrap, tell us what you each want your legacy to be.
You go first.
Okay, well, I'm going to put this through the context of filmmaking and writing, because I want my legacy to be a good dad and a good family.
I was like, how much time do we have?
So besides that, I would love people to just remember me as telling really entertaining stories about Black people that were relatable and compelling, and I want people to think of me as somebody who coached up the next generation, who really created an opportunity for other writers to, grow and eventually take my jobs. I think that this is. I'm glad that I'm sort of graduating to a position of showrunner, because I think that filmmaking and television making needs youthful energy. Yeah. I think that the youth are the ones who really sort of are the fuel and the fire of creativity for this field. So that's what I would like people to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked this question a lot, and every time it feels like I'm being asked it for the first time because I feel like it's constantly evolving. But, I think from a career perspective, I think it would be that my shows made a difference. Mm-hmm. That, nothing is more powerful to me than when I have a teacher DM me and tell me they added All-American to their curriculum in the classroom because it was the most engaged she'd had her students when she had them writing essays about the show, Yeah. When I hear that, the Black and Missing Foundation say that, like, people's engagement with them has gone up since Found was on the air, this is why I do what I do. If I can make a difference in the world, even in one person, then all of that feels worth it. So I think that's a large part of it. And then the other part was that I didn't just sort of ascend, but I propped that door open and yanked people through so that in retirement I can sit back and watch their greatness shine. I think that's it.
Thank you both. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.